Welcome to MSUA's Game Changers Live, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends, new technologies, and share what you need to know about where satellite technology is headed in the future. I'm your host, Lisa Dreer. Our guest today is Mark Holmes. He's the Group Content Director for Access Intelligence. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here, and usually I'm the one who's asking the questions, so there's a slightly different role for me today, but excited to be here.
Great, thank you. Maybe you can start by just giving us a little bit of background about Access Intelligence and all of the other elements of that you're working on.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm the Group Content Director for the satellite group within Access Intelligence. So Access Intelligence is a big corporate publisher. It's based out of Rockville, Maryland. It has a number of it works across a number of verticals. Satellite is one of the bigger verticals. Obviously, we have our big satellite show, which has been going for a good few years. And you know, my job really goes. I mean, it's very multifaceted. You know, I'm the editor of via satellite, which I've done now for almost a decade, which is kind of a little bit scary. But I also get involved on the event side as well. So I've been program chair for events like the Global Connected Aircraft Summit, CyberSat, which was an event we launched around 4 years ago, which looked to combine cybersecurity and satellites, and obviously work on the satellite show as well. So my role is slightly unique because it's a pretty hybrid role that mixes working on events and doing some good old-fashioned journalism and writing features, and as you've seen, we've done a lot of video stuff. We do our Thursday morning conversations, we do podcasts, so you know, we try and give the satellite community a very holistic content experience. So whether they want to watch videos, whether they want to read long magazine features, short daily briefs, you know, big overarching events covering big industry topics, we really try and cater for that. So it's an interesting experience, and from my perspective as well, it's slightly unusual because as you've all probably guessed, I'm not from Rockville, Maryland. I'm from Cambridge in the UK. So I'm sort of you know, I've been working for the company almost actually 21 years in April. So it's a slightly unique position, I think, for me as well. And you know, it's you know, it's always been it's a great community to serve. So it's you know, and I think we've you know, put together some great content pieces, and long may that continue.
Yes, and we've had the MSUA and your organization have had a really long partnership, and we value it so much. And we wanted to invite you here today to talk a little bit about some of the trends that are happening in the industry right now. And I also know that Access Intelligence not only has the satellite show coming up, but some virtual programs that are coming up as well. So we want to make sure that our members and broader community know about these upcoming events. Maybe we can start by just talking a little bit about, you know, what you see as the most important role that the satellite industry is playing in the future of connectivity right now.
I just think it's that term, the future of connectivity. I think if there's one thing that this pandemic has taught us over the last year, it is the importance of just that connectivity. And you know, it's not just about education, you know, remote people in rural areas, remote areas getting connectivity. It's everything from healthcare, better access to data. It's become so much more important. We are so much more interconnected than I think even most of us that work in these industries thought we were, and what we've seen over the last year. And it's no good just having, you know, like the big urban centers in major cities, you know, having access to these services. We need it everywhere. I mean, for us to, you know, overcome this pandemic, and you know, that means a global effort. That means a global access to information and data, and that's where, you know, satellite obviously plays a huge role in that. And if we didn't know it before, and I know a number of us did, we definitely know the importance of it. We definitely know the importance of it now, because, you know, from my, you know, from again, this is maybe more a personal opinion than a professional opinion, is these are the sorts of things that could happen again in the future. I mean, we hope this is hopefully a relatively one-off, and we won't see something like this, too much often in the future. But if we do, it's going to need a connectivity-based approach, as we are seeing today, to overcome this and get that information. So I think it's almost highlighted the importance of satellite over the last year, and it's become even more important than we thought it was pre-pandemic, I'm honest.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, speaking of that, what role do you think that the Leo constellations are going to play in this whole thing?
That's a tough one to answer. I mean, I think what's interesting is I always joke at the start of every year whenever I write the first editorial note for the year for Via Satellite that we're an industry in transition. But I actually think this year may be the time where, we are genuinely at that point. I mean, we're going from an industry that has traditionally launched somewhere between 50 or 20 geo satellites a year to all of a sudden hundreds of satellites potentially going up. It's a huge step change in our industry. What does the future hold? I mean, it's a tough one. The big question for me is always about where the customers are going to come from. And I think it's fantastic that we're going to have hundreds of satellites going up, that the technical capabilities that we're seeing in satellites nowadays is great. But ultimately, you need people, or you need organizations, governments, to buy that bandwidth. And I still think that's still a little bit of the unknown question. I mean, you get different answers when you talk to people. But as the editor of Via Satellite, I will say this: we want a healthy and successful satellite industry, because then we have a healthy and successful Via Satellite. We don't want to be writing in a few years' time the way they did back at the late 90s or early 2000s about the failures of these constellations. So we're definitely willing them to be successful. I think obviously the way we live, a lot has changed. So I always feel those direct comparisons with the 1990s are slightly erroneous, because I think the world has changed significantly then. So yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to believe that there's going to be room for all of them. I mean, it's just there's so much capacity, but we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, I think it's interesting when you take a player like Telesat as a good example. I mean, Telesat, whenever we've done our opening general session, I think it's fair to say is one of the smaller of the the big four when you compare SES, Eutelsat, and Intelsat. And it's interesting. I know SES with its MEO stuff, but they are being incredibly ambitious with what they're doing here. And if they're able to be successful here, this could really propel them massively forward. So you could have a shifting of who the big operators are in this sector over the last over the next few years. And that's a big change, because traditionally, when you look at the opening general session at Satellite, we've had, by and large, a lot of the same players over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So this might be the decade where we see, and when we have a panel at our Digital Leo Forum called the New World Order, we might see a new order emerge on who are the most significant operators, whether it's constellations or others in this sector. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see over the next few years.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you look at the satellite industry also, I think the commercialization of space is playing a huge role in this shift, and maybe some of these things coming to reality where they haven't maybe been able to in the past, right? So what's your view on kind of the commercialization of space and the role that it's playing in the future?
Well, the industry has changed so much in the last 2 decades. I remember when I first joined or started working in the space industry, I think it was just after the millennium, and there was almost like I remember going to one of my first satellite shows. I can't remember exactly what year, and someone was saying, well, we may as well enjoy it now, because we're probably not going to be around in like 20 years time. The thinking, I think, at the time was that IPTV would come in and broadcasting would eventually go to telecoms networks, and the big part of why satellites were relevant would no longer be there. Fortunately, that prediction was completely wrong, and we're actually seeing more opportunities for space than ever before. I think it's more attractive to young people than ever before. It obviously helps when you have some big names in business who have got involved and have increased the awareness, and I just think that's just like totally changed everything for our industry. I mean, when you see it's become part of popular culture again, and that's I think and I don't think it was the case 10 or 15 years ago. I don't think people were talking about space as much. I mean, obviously people in the industry were, but I think nowadays it actually goes a little bit across, it goes across more popular culture. I think young people are looking to, it's an attractive industry for them to join. 15 years ago, you would go into a room, a satellite show, not just our satellite show, but any satellite show, and the average age would be about 50 plus. That's no way to build a healthy industry. But now I think more young people are getting involved. I think it appeals to people's imaginations as well. I think it's very much a new frontier, and I think maybe for myself it'll come too late, but for my children and my children's children, there may well be opportunities to be involved in a space economy and be a part of that, which I think is tremendously exciting. So yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I think there's some incredible ambition right now. I think a lot of people are, that probably wouldn't have got involved in our industry 10, 15 years ago are now getting involved, and that's leading to, whether it's space debris, space tourism, looking at new ways in which we can use resources. It's leading to lots of really interesting stuff. It's great for an editor, great for an events producer, and I think great for someone like yourself as well, because the more people that are getting involved in the industry, the better. Yes,
so true. When you think about the users themselves, right? So when you're talking about, the enterprise or business users or even government users of satellite services and solutions, what type of criteria do you think, just in your experience, would you say are the most important criteria that they need to be considering right now, especially as these shifts and changes are occurring?
Well, the industry always had a little bit of a perception problem a few years ago. I mean, as much as we talked about it in the industry, that the technology was great, the perception outside was it was a little bit slow, a little bit outdated. It perhaps didn't work as it should. I mean, that was just the perception. So I think one of the major challenges the industry has, and maybe still has, is overcoming that perception that this technology is fast, it's reliable, it can do exactly what it says on the tin, and it's a more than a match for other terrestrial technologies. And that's why it's sort of interesting, really. I always find it, some of these satellites take 2 or 3 years, to get from a contract to the launch site. And by the time they get to the launch site, technology has increased in pace over that 2.5 years. So part of it, some of these are very difficult problems to overcome. But I kind of think, as I mentioned in my first answer, the importance of connectivity everywhere is so. We're seeing it. We're just seeing it as we approach this pandemic. It's no good just like everyone in the Washington D.C. area getting, vaccinated and stuff. You need everyone in the rural areas across the U.S. You need everyone to have access to healthcare, to connectivity, and data, and however things ultimately pan out in the future, it's absolutely vital, and it will be more involved in education as well. I mean, I think even if things get back to a relative normal over the next 2 or 3 years, I think things are going to change somewhat fundamentally. And I think people are used to using Zoom, Teams, StreamYard, whatever platforms, and that's where satellite comes in. So I think people will use satellites more. I think the big question is, can we start to see it play in verticals that it traditionally has not played in? I mean, we know mobility, we know government, we know enterprise, but right. it's going to need to be more than that for these constellations and others to be successful. We're going to need to see big deals with telcos. We're going to need to see other verticals that have traditionally not used satellite use satellite. And for them to do that, part of it is overcoming perception, but part of it is also, making people outside of the industry who've been way outside the industry start to see the benefits of this technology.
Yeah. What do you think that we need to do as, as a market as a whole to get that education out there?
That's a tough question. I think part of it is, and I remember when I did a Thursday morning conversation, and I was talking to like one of the younger people who I was talking to, Hannah Bird, and she was sort of saying that there's this perception amongst young people that a career in space means being an astronaut or something like that, and there's many more careers in space. So I think ultimately it is about, particularly with young people, getting them involved, showing them there's a wide range of career opportunities to work in space. It's not just what you necessarily see on the TV, and there are other ways that you can get involved. So I think that it is partly that. I think it's getting more people involved in the industry. I still think, even though it's got a lot better over the last 10 years, I still think there's a way to go. And I think the more smart people you get involved in the industry, it stands to reason you get really smart solutions, things that people didn't think of. And I think you're already seeing that. I mean, I think, this new space movement, I know some people don't like the term new space because they think what's new space, what's old space, but you're already seeing some of these companies come in who have, when you take a company like Astroscale, it's breathtaking in terms of its ambition. I mean, it's a company you probably wouldn't have seen enter the industry 15 years ago or something like that. And so I think the more you get companies like that, coming up with bold, ambitious strategies in terms of space. The other thing I would say as well is, I think this Generation Z, younger generation, they're a very morally conscious generation. They want a more sustainable planet. They want to live in a planet where we live maybe much more responsibly than what we've done before. So if space can fit into that, and satellite technologies, space technologies fit into that, I think that's going to create a momentum for our industry as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was on a Clubhouse event recently where the folks on the call were talking about, how do you get a career in the space industry? And I thought it was really interesting that there is kind of this sense that maybe there's limited opportunity. And the thing that I brought to the table was, hey, look, these are normal companies that have accounting departments and like they have every other department that every other company has. They need people in all of those areas supporting the business, not just the people that are, the engineers and the things that you typically think of from a space perspective. And so I think you're right. Just kind of broadening out people's awareness that, these are companies just like any other company, and they need all of those roles to be filled to make the company successful.
I also think one of the big advantages is it's a very resilient industry as well. I mean, it is an industry that, whether the global economic outlook is strong, whether it's going through crashes, it's an industry that always remains relatively robust. I mean, obviously, like any industry, it has its success and failures, but there's the need for satellite connectivity is always going to be there. It's not one of those industries that has massive spikes upward and then massive spikes downward. So I think in that way it's also a very attractive industry as well. And maybe we don't play on that. I mean, we almost play on the negative side of that a little.
Yeah.
We say, it doesn't have the boom that you may see in other industries, but it's an industry that is constantly growing, even if I mean, we all would like it to grow more, admittedly, but it's still growing, and it almost does its best work when things are not so good, like we've seen during this pandemic, when there is a real need for industry, when we see it disaster recovery, we see it in climate change, and these are like massive issues for like Gen Z and everything. This is where I think there's opportunities for our industry to not just step up, because I kind of think it's doing it, but it's an opportunity maybe to really bring that perception of what the satellite and what the space industry does.
I agree. Well, you have a number of events that are coming up. I thought I'd give you a chance to talk a little bit about them, and then also just mention that the team over at Access Intelligence has worked with the Mobile Satellite Users Association, or MSUA, to offer MSUA members a 20% discount on their registration for satellite this year. And that broadens out to these other events that are coming up, and one of them coming up right away here in April. So maybe you can give us a little overview of all the things that are coming up.
Yeah, that'll be tough because there's so much good stuff, but I'll do my best. As most people know, I struggle to sometimes keep things brief, but I mean, just before I talk about the Digital Leo event, I think this year what we've done from a content perspective is we've tried to create a very holistic content experience. So we started the year with some big exclusives in via satellite, and Sunil Bharti Mittal talking about OneWeb. We spoke to Dan Goldberg the day of the Lightspeed announcement, and then we go into our Digital Leo forum, which is obviously in a couple of weeks' time. Then we have an EMEA and Asia digital event in May, and then obviously we have our in-person satellite event in July. And for me, if it goes how I hope it will go and expect it to go, it will all flow together. So what we've been doing in VIA will flow into the digital events, and then will flow into the in-person event in July. You know, the Digital Leo event, I think, is going to be fantastic. I'm unashamedly biased, Lisa, so you know, you have to take that into consideration. But just look at the range of speakers that we have speaking in it. You know, we have all of the top operator CEOs. We have Gwynne Shotwell, Steve Collar, Rudolph Belmer, Pradman Kaul, Mark Dankberg, Matt Desch, Dan Goldberg, Neil Masterson making his first public comment since becoming CEO of OneWeb. All of them are taking part, and what's interesting there is Gwynne is actually taking part on the New World Order panel, not a launch panel. So very much with a focus on Starlink. But look at the end users, look at the other people that we're bringing, look at the non-satellite people we're bringing in. So we have a mobility panel that features Maersk, Air Canada, Aeromexico, Omni Access. So we cover high-end yachting, commercial shipping, commercial airlines. We're bringing in companies like Swiss Re for the first time, a big insurance company that just signed a deal with ICEYE. And again, this is what I was talking about, like new verticals, new companies using satellite, and that's why I was very keen to get them in. We have an absolutely mad journalists, analysts roundtable. So we have people that you would naturally think maybe as competitors all together talking the future of the industry. So we have Chris Bohr from NSR, we have Peter Deselding, we have Amy Saunders from Satellite Evolution. So, you know, all of a sudden we're bringing people together, you know, putting clusters of content together that I think are really fascinating. So, you know, we're talking to the operators, we're talking to some of the big technology companies like Virgin Orbit, Kymeta, ST Engineering. We're talking to end users. So I think it's just a fantastic speaker lineup. We think it's the right time, again, following the momentum of the big interviews we did earlier in the year in via satellite, and it's just the right time for us to do a big Digital Leo event. And I'm somewhat humbled by the support that we've got from the industry in terms of some of the speakers we've been able to get. And then following on from that, in May we have an Asia and EMEA event. And the thinking behind this is, I mean, we know that international travel is going to be constrained this year. We also know it's not just the fact that it's going to be constrained, but we know companies, you know, perhaps their travel budgets are going to be cut. So we need to provide, you know, an international flavor to our content. So we're actually, and I feel sorry for my US colleagues because we're going to be starting it early in the day. UK time, so we can bring in the Asia audience and European, Middle East, and but we have some great speakers lined up there as well. The likes of John Paget, Chief Experience Officer, Carnival Cruises. We have Orange. Big telco. We have a lot of the big Asia operators speaking on a panel, which is going to be great. So again, it all feeds into a big picture. I mean, I think what's interesting is that the events standalone are incredibly strong, but when you put everything together, it provides a very unique, holistic view of the satellite industry, and that's really the plan. And I love it when we get those end users. I mean, it's almost like a borderline obsession for me. It's like, we've got to get the likes of Maersk involved, we've got to get airlines involved, we've got to get companies speaking directly to the satellite industry about what they're looking for. So getting the likes of Carnival and others is it's almost as important to me as getting the big satellite speakers. It may not, it's bringing the whole cycle together, and that's what we're looking to do. And we're excited. I mean, we've got a great team in the satellite group, Access Intelligence. I mean, so we're all excited to bring these together.
Great. And the best place for people to get more information is satshow.com, correct?
Satshow.com. There's loads of information. I mean, we're all kinds of digital passes, available, and I think they're tremendous value, even from a content perspective. I mean, if you think about it, what it would cost for like a hotel room and a flight to see some of this content, I mean, it would be pretty expensive. And obviously with digital technologies, you cut the cost down. I think, and again, unashamedly biased, but I think it's the best speaker lineup of any digital satellite show that there's been over the last 6-7 months. So we're excited to bring it to everyone. We think we're serving the community. We think we're serving the community with something that they will appreciate and they will enjoy, and it will be entertaining. I mean, it will be informative, entertaining. I hope you'll get to go there as well, Lisa. I hope you'll enjoy it as well. And but that's what we need to do. I mean, it's a new environment, and we're using connectivity to bring best in class digital events. I mean, I want us, whenever you start an event, you think, or when I start an event or I work on an event, I think I want this event to be the best. I don't want it to be average or just another satellite event. I want this event to really pop and maybe make a difference. So I feel like with what we've got coming up, we give ourselves half a chance, which is good.
Yeah, I have to plug my session. So I'm actually speaking, I'm not speaking, I'm moderating a session, the Dynamic Networks, so land, sea, and mobile session during the live event in DC. So anyone that's watching, make sure you check out that session if you're at the event, and hopefully they tape that particular session too.
Yeah, and please, I mean, we definitely appreciate MSUA's support. We think you do a fabulous job. One of the great things about this industry is the partnerships you're able to form. So I think we're very blessed at Access Intelligence that we're able to form great partnerships with the likes of yourselves and others, so that we can bring, I mean, if you don't have the collaborative partnership approach, it's very difficult to bring some of the all of the content that we would like to bring. So we're very, very appreciative. I'd just like to give a quick shout out to my editorial colleagues, Jeff Hill and Rachel Jewett, who have been working with me all year. I mean, I think it's a massive team effort, and a team effort during a pandemic as well. I mean, we're all living under, all of our personal circumstances have changed, and I applaud our editorial team for the the ambition that we've showed and what we're putting together, not just for the digital events and the in-person event, but what we've been doing for via satellite, the daily news feed, and it's been a hectic start to the year.
Yes, you guys sure are busy. Mark, thank you so much for being here today to share your insights on satellite mobile connectivity. I really look forward to having you on again. We also want to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. To learn how to participate in a Game Changers live session, become a member of the MSUA, get that 20% discount on SAT Show. Definitely make sure that you head on over to msua.org, and we'll see you next time on MSUA's Game Changers Live.
Thank you again. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. And again, I think you and MSUA do a fantastic job, and we look forward to seeing you in Washington in July. I'm sure you'll put together a great session, and all the best for the year.
Thank you. You too.